Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patrick Milliken from the Poison Pen Bookstore, and I am here with another of our virtual events. Today, thanks to the miracle of technology, we have best-selling authors known as Lars Kepler here today, discussing their new book, Lazarus. Right here, I've got a copy, and just some housekeeping. We do have copies, and we are expecting some signed book plates shortly. They're in Stockholm, Sweden, and my good friend Robert Anglen is here at an undisclosed locale in the southeast valley of the Phoenix area. And he's going to be, stepping up to do the interview today. But welcome, guys. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
Let me give you both, or all three of you, the formal intro that you deserve here. And if I blow the pronunciation, please bear with me. Lars Kepler is the pseudonym of the critically acclaimed husband and wife team, Alexandra Coelho Anduril and Alexander Anduril. Their #1 internationally best-selling novels have sold more than 15 million copies in 40 languages. The Andurils were both established writers before they adopted the pen name Lars Kepler, and have each published several esteemed novels. They live in Stockholm, Sweden. And then our friend Robert Anglen, who I've known for, gosh, at least 10 years, more. I think we originally met here in the bookstore 15 years ago at least. And he contributed what I say was definitely the darkest story to the anthology Phoenix Noir, and wonderful writer. Robert Anglen investigates consumer issues for the Arizona Republic, where he's worked since 2003. From 2011 to 2015, Anglen co-led Call 12 for Action at 12 News as part of a joint broadcast and publishing project. In 2014, Call 12 for Action recovered more than $2 million for consumers, something no television station in the country had achieved. His award-winning investigations have exposed fraud, crime, and corruption. He's written about the mafia and the Federal Witness Protection Program, abuses within the probate court system, and questionable charities tied to a worldwide televangelism ministry. He was named Reporter of the Year in 2005 by the Arizona Press Club for stories linking taser stun guns to deaths across the country. On September 11, 2001, he was only blocks away from the World Trade Center collapse and wrote first-person accounts from ground zero. That's just a few of the things he's done. But so I'm going to largely, he'll be pleased to know, be kind of invisible during the program, but I'll be monitoring the Facebook feed. So if you all have questions for our authors today, please go ahead and send them in the comments field. And about a half an hour in or so, I'll pop up on the screen and ask some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Robert.
Well, welcome once again to America, sort of.
Sort of, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome to Stockholm, sort of.
Thank you. It's great to be there. You've given us a heck of a Christmas novel. It's full of warm experiences, and it scared the hell out of me. It's a fantastic book, Lazarus. And when I saw the cover, when I saw the title come in, I said, Lazarus, huh? So we're going to talk about people rising up from the dead. And I knew with you guys, it was going to be demonic. It wasn't going to be a miracle. It was going to be really, really dark. And you certainly delivered that. Why don't you, can you talk a little bit about the plot behind Lazarus? We once again join Una Lena and Saga Bauer as...
Yeah, absolutely. We can't spoil it, but well, the setup is kind of, it's in the outskirts of Oslo.
Yeah, it actually starts in Oslo, not in Stockholm. It's a dead man in an apartment in Oslo, and he's been beaten to death. But the police notice that he's an unknown, graveyard trophy collector in some way. So when they open the freezer in the kitchen, they have this terrible finding.
Yeah.
It's frozen body parts and pieces of skeletons. And among these pieces, they found a skull, which they managed to identify, and it's Jonna Linna's wife's skull. She died many years ago due to disease, but they found her skull in his freezer. And just like 2 days later, the German police contacts Jonna. They need his help. It's hanged man in what you say?
Yeah, a camping
area in Rostock. And when Jonna comes to this crime scene, he understands that this pattern it's totally insane, but it seems like Jörg Walter is still alive, though everybody knows
he's dead.
Yeah,
so I think that is the start. Jonna feels the shadow of Jörg Walter in these events.
And everybody thinks he's paranoid, of course, because
everybody knows that Jörg is dead. So
now,
but then we have the title Lazarus. So.
Well,
there's that. And you have a lot of dead in here. I feel privileged to be able to review this book or read it because the last time you were in the States, I believe in 2018, I interviewed you about The Sandman, which was really the Jörg book. I mean, we get to see him. Jörg has kind of haunted all your books in the Linna series, but Sandman, we got to meet him, and he's really a chilling character, a serial killer who whispers people into that good night, and often very good at all. This book, I mentioned the word dark. Your book's always dark, and I appreciate that. But this one seemed really violent. I don't know if you count bodies in your books. I know Lee Child has done that, but this book, it's relentless, and it comes as close to a horror story I think you can get without being supernatural.
Mm.
Well, it's kind of a climax of, as you said, a long story about Jörg Walter. He had followed Jonna since even before our first book, The Hypnotist. So it's a long story coming to an end. So, and it's climax, and of course, there will be bodies.
Yeah. But we don't count bodies. It's the story has its turns.
Yeah, we just follow.
Yeah.
Do you ever scare yourselves?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
With Lazarus, we scared ourselves so much. Well, I always have nightmares when we write the books, but actually we have come to believe that the nightmares are kind of healthy or something, because it means that we are touching our real fear.
Yeah, we are in connection, because I think crime fiction is about handling your fears in some way, both for you as a writer, but also as a reader, because the real fear, the thing we meet in real life when we read the newspapers and so forth, we never ever get any answers, but in crime fiction, you can handle that fear, because you know you have heroes like Jonna Linna and Saga Bauer, and they will hunt the perpetrator down in some way. And so it's like a journey from chaos to order. It's from injustice to justice, from questions to answers, and that's like
it helps. It's a satisfying journey, actually. So with all this darkness and everything, we have the light. And I think Jörg Walter is kind of the creation of a lot of research that we made of serial killers, real serial killers, and also the fruit of our imagination. So we kind of interlaced the research with our deepest fear. Absolutely.
Do you feel like your books, I use the word horror, do you feel like your books are horror stories?
No, we call crime fiction but we have certainly horror elements in our stories. Well, they are mostly, think about the plot, it's mostly a thriller plot always. It's you know, the main characters' lives are in danger and they have to, you know, solve the case.
Yeah, they are drawn into the events. So that is kind of the thriller.
So it's not a traditional police work story when you have a case and you solve it, but you're not actually involved as a character. And it's not a horror story because horror is in one way depressing. It always ends with, you know, no answers. It's the evil always continuing in a horror movie or horror story.
So it's kind of maybe something in between. We are always there. We know that we have these horror elements. It's just the way we write. I think it's the way our imaginations look like in a way.
And to just amplify that a little bit, a little background on Urich, his preferred method of dealing with people is to not just torture them, but to torture everyone they love and to bury them in underground vaults and let them asphyxiate. And he's in top form in your new book, or at least he may be. We're not sure he's dead or alive.
Yeah. It's
like
his
that.
thing. It's not like a pervert. He don't like to torture people. He can do it, of course, if it serves his purposes. But he wants to take everything from his victims, their family, their friends, until they are like living on, but they're not knowing that they're already dead inside. And at some moment, his victims will understand that my life is hopeless. I will never ever see my loved ones again, and then they take their own lives. That's Urich's mission.
Yeah, that's his modus operandi in a way. So yeah, I think creating a villain like that, in a way, it sounds really weird, but I think we understand Urich Walter as well. And I think that is a key for us in how we want to write. We don't want to just draw a picture of a monster. No. Everything was taken away from him. And in a way, in his mind, he's just fixing the order again, making it making a balance in the universe.
That's right. So we absolutely understand him. We can't, of course, agree with his methods, but we but we understand him.
But
and I think that's a key for us as writers, to understand each character.
Even the most evil one.
One of the things that's really enjoyable about your books is your perspective shifts. You don't stick with one character at all. Sometimes you're telling us the point of view of even minor characters. You present the one I particularly enjoyed was Sabrina in this particular book, the bodyguard. And so you shift perspectives, but you don't see a lot from Urich or other killers that you introduce. Your perspectives usually come from the victims or the hunters.
Yeah, mostly. We haven't tried the other way around too, but mostly, as you say, it's the heroes and the victims we follow.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make people of the victims.
Yeah, because
they are not just victims, they are full
persons,
complex persons with memories and hopes and everything.
Because our books are pretty violent and graphic, but for us it's a loyalty to the victims and to the authenticity of our research. So we have to make each character alive. We must give them the opportunity to, have a full life in our story, even even if it's just a few pages.
Yeah, not to be a function in the drama, if you understand what you mean.
It's not just a body.
No, it's kind of, they are
Well,
alive to us.
It certainly makes you care about these people and what fate is about to befall them. One of the things that I notice in your books is that you, for want of a better term, you bring the violence home. You bring it into normal everyday houses where terrible things happen. And there was a scene in The Sandman where it was just an ordinary house turned into this. And you do it again in this book with a family where you just kind of, it's very hard not to talk about what happens. You know,
I know.
Yeah, but it scares a lot.
Yeah, but I think that is kind of what we are so afraid of, that the violence can occur everywhere.
Suddenly.
In normal life and in normal families. So there was a lamp that just turned off here. Maybe is the picture too dark? I can turn on more light here, or is it?
It's a little dimmer, but it looks okay to me.
Okay.
Okay.
It actually adds a nice kind of sinister atmosphere to the whole thing.
It's a little bit Halloween now.
That's right.
Okay. Good. So we just keep it this way then.
Yeah.
I have to ask, because as I joked at the beginning that you gave us this warm, wonderful Christmas story, and the story is set against Christmas. Was that intentional on your part? Were you trying to use the holiday and the cheer as a backdrop to this otherwise really?
Well, I don't know. I am very childish with Christmas. I love Christmas. I am kind of a Christmas fanatic. So maybe placing it so close to Christmas is also, I don't know, it adds something to the drama, in a way.
She loves Christmas. We already have a Christmas tree inside, all the decoration. Yeah. She's bought all the
gifts. I have bought all the gifts, and we have made the gingerbread. So I'm sorry. It's this isolation.
We're all isolated.
Yeah. So yes, I think maybe the Christmas.
Yeah, the clash between this terrifying story and the idea of Christmas.
Yeah, the idyllic. Yeah.
And I love the observation, speaking of Christmas decorations, in this particular scene where the house is involved. The one thing that keeps clicking is, why aren't there Christmas decorations? Why aren't there? Where is all the cheer in this scene?
Exactly.
And that's kind of the denouement there is pretty awful.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's terrible.
So. I think I asked you this before once, but Sweden's such a good quality of life, and crime is very low. And so what propels this darkness in Nordic crime fiction, particularly? What are you tapping into there? And clearly American audiences love that, but
well, it's true that the society is very safe, and
no, we live in the middle of Stockholm, and we have never heard gunshots ever here, so it's pretty safe. But maybe that's one of the clues to as a writer, to imagine the worst things. Maybe you have to feel safe. Basically,
or maybe we all know that mankind has the ability to do the best things and also the worst things, and I think it's this contradiction that we always have this fascination about.
Everlasting discussion. How can we be able to do such wonderful things to each other, and at the
So
same
bad
time so
things.
horrible things. It's
And I think maybe you have to have kind of a safe society to want to read these stories. Because if you were living in a war zone, you wouldn't want to read it.
I'm sure you prefer
Yeah, you
nice
would like
stories.
to romantic novels or something maybe. But I think these are universal stories. People have always told these stories to each other about death, life, extreme situations, choices you have to make.
Yeah, and I think it's not maybe so much about violence that, but what we're talking about, the extreme situations, because we push our characters into extreme situations just to test them, test their relationships to each other, their moral,
their courage,
and so forth. And this.
And as writers and as readers, we kind of can look at all this drama, and we can still be safe in a way.
This doesn't answer the question about Sweden and Scandinavia, but well, it's dark here.
Yeah, it's very dark, and it's very, that it doesn't live many people here, so it's kind of, I don't know.
No, it's just 10 million in all Sweden. So
wow. I think we have 7 million in Arizona, a little more than 7 here in Arizona alone. Do you ever, when you're setting up the plots, and I want to ask you a lot about your writing style, but when you're setting these things up, as you're going back and forth through the plots, do you ever worry about having to outdo yourself from the last one? Outdo the excitement, outdo the violence, outdo,
No.
Never think about
that. Thriller work.
No, I think for every book so far has come like a logical consequence of the book before, in a way. Yeah. So it's just the idea has just come to us after we have finished the book, and then
and then we try to find the, for us, perfect plot skeleton for each book. Like you were mentioning the Sandman, and that's basically an undercover story. And for us, that was the key to that story. And for each book, we try to find some specific plot idea which we work through around or with.
Exactly, and with the Fire Witness, it was kind of like a ghost story, and with the hypnotist, the idea was kind of a Freudian nightmare. And with Lazarus, we wanted Jonah Linna and Saga Bauer to be the main characters this time. Everything should happen to them, and we had waited for such a long time for them to be in the absolute middle of the events.
Yeah, because we try to make, when we write books, we think we want them to be possible standalones. You can read them as standalones.
The books, yes.
Yeah, each book. Of course, if you read them all, you will have the biggest story about our characters. But we always, with a new book, usually introduce a new main character, one or two, which is not the main characters for the whole series, which is Jonah Linna and Saga Bauer. But
with Lazarus,
we skipped the new main characters. We just had Jonah and Saga, and that was both challenging but also logic in one way.
But it was great actually to get to know them, to come so close to them in Lazarus.
Because they are, they have the same situation, but they make totally different choices. They go in opposite directions actually with the same information.
So we wanted to have this kind of like in the fairy tale.
It's a saga,
where you have 3 warnings, or the concept of 3 chances, and here Jonah comes to Saga and he gives her 3 advices, and she breaks every advice. She goes to a totally different direction. So that was kind of this evil saga that we wanted to explore.
Well, I thought you did something pretty remarkable in the middle of the, you take Yona kind of out of it for a part of the book. Your detective hero is somewhere else, trying to convince everybody that he's right and failing that, leaving for good reasons, but he has to abandon his partner and his coworkers to their fates, and that lets you talk about saga quite a bit. I've always, as a reader, felt like your evocation of saga was really fantastic. To me, she's always been, at least with these two books, perhaps not the Rabbit Hunter or certainly not the Nightmare, but in the Sandman and Lazarus, I think she is the main character.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And,
absolutely.
but man, do you not like her?
Yes.
We love her.
We love her. We love Saga, and
she's complicated, just as Jonah.
She is totally different from Jonah, and no, she's
wonderful.
Yeah, and when we wrote Lazarus, I was dreaming about Saga every night. I was so close to her in a way, trying to protect her.
It sounds crazy, but
yeah. No, we love her.
But you're not afraid to take chances. I don't think that some writers would. I mean, you really hurt some of your main people. And in ways.
And we can't spoil.
Sometimes we meet readers and they're angry with us because we're so cruel to Jonah and Saga.
Yes.
Does that?
But we can protect our characters. It's not what writers do. We need to,
They must handle their own lives.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going to say. Is there any character in your books that are safe? Is anyone ever safe?
Not really.
No.
Because we travel along with them. They are sharing our present time with us. So we don't know, actually.
No, they kind of live a parallel life.
Without the serial killer, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's hope.
Do you think that you're going to branch off from Lena at some point? Is there going to be a standalone book in your future?
Don't know. We have always said that if we want to, we absolutely must. We must follow our lust.
We never put up rules because that's not good for writers. Even though we have contracts, they're not saying when we have to deliver a book.
No.
So we're totally free to do what we want to.
But so far it has been so enjoyable being with Jonah and Saga. And writing together.
And it's crazy because each time we end a book, it's like the last weeks, it's so intense writing process. And we're not doing any laundry, not any dishes. We just write and write and write. And when we come to the end, we're so exhausted and we think like we're never ever going to write another sentence again. We feel empty and then we start to clean our apartment. It's always like 1 or 2 days of cleaning, then we have a new idea. So
far, knock on wood, it has been like that. And so we are still so, curious about Jonah, Lena, and Saga Bauer. We still don't know who they are, really. We want to come closer.
I want to ask you about your writing process, because your books, I read the book over the weekend. I read the book Saturday, basically more or less in 2 sittings. And it's a 500-page book, and it was fast. And I think you do things intentionally. I'm interested in how you set that up as you write, because you must, I don't know if you say there's no rules, but you must have a writing rule about this chapter. Each chapter can no longer be, or can be no longer than X. and you want to move on every couple of pages. Is that intentional, or is that just how the stories unfold?
Well, it's both intentional and the way it happened. It's like a rhythm we found, and as you say, we always, you know, we shake it. Of course, we want to have this rhythm with the short chapters. So if we feel that the chapter is too long, we have to understand. We discuss it because it's not the way we usually do it. So something is wrong if it's a too long chapter, because then the heartbeat is not the way we want it to be. No. So it's hard to say, but it's the same with the plot. We work with the plot so much, like for several months, every day, like 5-6 hours, just thinking about the plot, writing notes. But
and I think that is very important, that we know exactly what book we are going to write before we go to our computers.
Yeah, we're two writers, we must write the same book. So.
But then when we sit down and write, the story takes the command, and we just follow the story, because when the characters come alive, we just follow. But yeah, we always want to have kind of a fast-paced thriller, but we also always search for the core, the psychological core, in a way.
And it's a challenge, of course, to have a fast-paced story and still, you know, complex characters and complex psychological relation.
The inner of the story, in a way.
So I met the writing part of it. I have this picture of you two throwing ideas at each other in the before the writing process starts. Oh, we'll do this. Oh, we'll do this, and it goes back and forth. Is that accurate? Is that how you do it?
Well, we actually share like every moment, every part of the writing process. It's not like we divide stuff. We just work it through together. So it sounds like the way you said when we are, you know, finding the ideas. I think this would be a perfect situation for this specific sequence. Or, well, now I think they should go out in the deep snow or whatever. We continue to discuss and we have a lot of fun. But when we have the story, we sit down and we write the same story, so we just take small parts of the story and write. We sit side by side, one computer each, and I write one part and Alexandra another small part, and then we email each other just to meet her, and I continue and I edit Alexandra's part and I add things and delete things, of course, and then we.
And I do the same.
And then we email again and again until we, writing the same thing.
Yeah, and because I think for us it's so important that Lars Kepler is one voice. So it really works well when we change text with each other so many times that in the end we don't know who wrote what. It's just one voice.
So it's no idea anymore to protect your ideas because you don't remember who had the idea from start.
I imagine there's some screaming involved at some point.
Yeah, well, I can protect my text sometimes, but well.
Alexander is very sensitive.
Yeah, no, but not exactly screaming, but I can walk away for a while and think it over.
So I have to ask, which one of you is responsible for, in this new book, the character called the Beaver?
That's also one thing we don't know. He was there.
Yeah, but
the Beaver's an interesting composite, and he's very, very ugly.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, he's not, you wouldn't want to meet him.
No, but it's like he's educated. He's what do you say? He can talk very well about his situation, but then he has this.
He's well articulated.
Yeah, but then he has his anger. Suddenly he becomes like a wild bear or something. He can't stop. He's too full of anger and violence. So he's scary in that way.
Yeah, he's definitely scary.
Yeah.
Hey, Robert, are you seeing, are they kind of disappearing from the screen a little bit?
I see that we are disappearing here.
Yeah, it's a there it goes.
There we go.
I think it's auto focusing is what I think.
It must be an autofocus kind of feature.
Okay.
I'm sure, yeah. So maybe I try to put on this lamp.
Maybe it's getting darker and darker.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's Sweden.
We must help the camera a bit.
Reflected. I think maybe it's easier for the camera now. We'll see. We are still kind of blurry.
Hello, camera.
It will find.
Oh, there it goes.
It's better.
There we go.
Yeah, it's an autofocus thing because it's in the middle of us. So it's
Right.
focused on the wall behind, yeah. Well, that's
The,
interesting.
So I was asking about the beaver, and he's, again, you've created this very scary human being that you're right, I wouldn't want to meet, although I think I have a couple of times. And you give us, and I thought the way you presented who he was kind of brilliant, really. You don't tell us anything about, you put him in situations, and then toward the end of the book, we learn a little bit about what his job was. But one thing your books do from book to book is you kind of leave me on a cliffhanger. And you've done that here as well. And I have to ask, I assume we're going to see more of the beaver.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know. Well,
yeah.
He's not dead, so
No.
I'm sure.
No, he's also a very interesting person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think we will meet him again. I have absolutely the feeling that we will do that.
Now, part of researching, well, one of the things I wanted to ask you was about, early on you talked about the grave robbing, which is something, at least I haven't come across much in America. And you start with this very evocative scene where body parts are found in a fridge by a grave robber. And it's talked about in your book as if this is, well, it's shocking, but yet it's known. If I had learned in America that somebody was robbing graves, I'd be aghast. It's just not something, but is that something that comes up in?
Well, there was actually a woman here in Sweden a couple of years ago that collected skeletons, real skeletons. It's so terrible. I don't know if.
I mean, I'm sure it's not common, but
No, but this has happened, and well, we all know Ed Gein.
yeah.
He was kind of a graveyard collector there, so I think maybe it's kind of the haunting of Ed Gein that these kind of stories, you never forget them when you hear them. So they are, maybe it's reflections from that.
You do a lot of research for your books, criminal research. I read, I believe that you actually went, you weren't satisfied with just reading descriptions of prisons. You actually went into one of the more notorious Swedish prisons and spent time with inmates and guards. What propels you to do that?
Well, as you say, you can go Google almost anything, but it's not the same as here the acoustics in the catacombs
In the prison.
to feel the smell in the prison cells, to feel the rhythm of the movements, because it's so much security all the time.
They are not going anywhere. So they are moving in a certain way because, they have to wait for doors to open all the time. And you can never Google that.
And I think it's especially important for us as Swedes, because we have seen so many, prison movies from Hollywood, and a Swedish prison is not like a Hollywood prison anyway. So it's important to do the real thing.
Yeah, and authenticity is really, really a big thing for us in our books, because we know that the books are fiction, but they stand with one leg in the absolute reality, where forensics and the medical knowledge and the police work, it has to be authentic.
Yeah, so it's real police work, but of course the cases are really, really extreme. But ordinary police work in Sweden is, traffic stuff and and domestic violence as everywhere. But we of course concentrate on the most extreme cases.
I imagine that you have the police really enjoy meeting you and talking to you when you do your research.
They are very generous.
Yeah, we have a lot of help, actually. Yeah.
And with the prison, they were also very generous. It was the how do you say?
The manager,
The manager. He had read all our books, and it was also very interesting to see the manager's room.
Yeah.
So we got kind of access to areas that we didn't hope for getting, but we did. And we were also in these isolation rooms, and that was also very, very strange, in a very small room that one person had spent so much time in, kind of a haunted room in a way.
Patrick, are we seeing questions from people?
Yeah, there are a few questions. Actually, I have a question of my own, which is a little while ago you were talking about how your stories kind of tap into the universal, and I was thinking about it. Are there particular? Well, are there elements of folklore or myth that are specific to Scandinavia? You think about the archetype of the forest, and don't go into the forest, and these stories that speak to these universal fears and that we all have. Can you pinpoint anything specifically Scandinavian that kind of plays into that?
Oh,
sure. Yes.
I can't really think of something Scandinavian right now, but I think maybe the serial killer, the archetype serial killer, maybe that is a transformation from, what is it called? The Bluetooth, the beard, Bluebeard.
Oh, yeah.
So if you remember Bluebeard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these old stories with a very, very dangerous person and vulnerable people, maybe.
Then stories, the real stories about our kings in the past is, I think, reflecting us too. We have
the princes and queens, and maybe
the
heroes.
I don't know, because it's retold stories about when a king is killed in Sweden, and like on the masquerade.
Masquerade ball. Yeah, but I don't know if we have a certain Scandinavian mythological story.
And as you say, it's the stories you previous told kids was stories about the woods, of course. Don't go into the woods.
And now it's don't go into the car.
No,
Right.
Not the van. Watch out.
Certainly not the white van.
Well, it's funny. We've done so many of these virtual programs, and as we're all, as readers and as authors, kind of navigating this very bizarre time together. You know, a question that always comes up is, you know, how are you responding to the pandemic, and do you see, and this seems especially apropos in the kind of books you write, this isolation and the pandemic, has it in some ways inspired you at all for future plot stories?
I think the opposite, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because maybe there will be, you know, a flood of books about the pandemic next year. Who knows?
But I don't think so, actually, because it's depressing, and it's you know, so much real suffering, and well.
Yeah, and so we don't know. We feel that we have been so privileged so far.
Yeah.
There are so many people that are suffering so bad from this.
Yeah.
I think when you write a story, you must feel, oh, I got this great idea, and it has this and this and this, and the pandemic is just take us away from this. Give us the vaccine now, please.
Right.
I did. It's funny because I was going to ask a similar question to Patrick. I thought of all the writers that I read and interview, that the best equipped to come up with a story revolving around COVID and the face mask and the disguised identity, it might be you two. But
well, maybe in a couple of years, if we can have a distance.
Yeah, on the other side of the pandemic, we can start to think about those things.
But
you know,
we can't transform it to entertainment so far.
No, because as we were talking about before, we do a lot of research, but we never use real cases, because when you have real cases, you have real victims, and that's not entertainment for us anyway. So people are different, but for us, we want to have fictional victims.
Now, I'm sure you've been asked this question plenty of times, but the influence of, the very famous Swedish, and I'm going to blow the pronunciation. Is it Sjöwall? Say that again. Yes.
Almost, we know it's impossible to pronounce.
Only Swedes can pronounce it. So
can you say it one more time?
Sjöwall.
No, not a chance.
So you were saying Sjöwall? No?
Sjöwall?
Yeah, good.
Sjöwall and Waller.
Waller?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, those were so, groundbreaking books in many ways. And it really, kind of showed American and actually readers worldwide, there was so much about the social history of what was going on in Sweden during that, very important time, 60s, 70s period. They couldn't have, did they influence you? I can't see how they wouldn't have.
No, of course.
Yes.
We read them when we were young. Every summer you read the Sjöwall books.
Yes, they really dominated, and they kind of started, or they set the standard for a Swedish, very strong crime fiction tradition in Sweden.
Yeah.
And then came Henning Mankell after them in their tradition.
Right.
So it's a very strong tradition in Sweden.
Absolutely. Now, a few questions really quickly from the audience here. There is a viewer named Abby who asks, do you have any serial killer thrillers, books or movies that you particularly love and may have influenced or inspired your work?
Oh, well, a lot. Well, you can't escape The Silence of the Lambs, of course.
It's kind of a template, isn't it?
Yeah, but I really, really love this Mind Hunter too. This new.
TV series, yes, it's really
That's
good.
a fantastic show.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So there are so many.
So we read a lot, and of course, a lot of American writers.
Yeah, and we actually Mindhunter, we saw twice, and we almost never see anything twice. So
and even it was better even the second time. So it's brilliant, actually.
Debbie asks, what was so interesting about the prison manager's room?
Yeah, because he had his kingdom in a way. He behaved, yeah, we were surprised because he was kind of very proud over his prison, and he had this big map on one wall with the whole prison and everything, So, and he showed us this is this and this is this, with he had a stick in his hand and he showed us everything. So
and we asked him about what you do if it's a hostage situation. He has said nothing. We just isolate them.
Yeah, and everybody knows we don't do hostage situations. So he was kind of a very tough man.
Yeah, it was.
And
it was like the room wanted to be the opposite of the prison cells.
Yeah.
So it was a.
Yeah, it was kind of a very flashy room, very big and open.
And with a view, the prisoners had a view of the wall.
And he had a view of the landscape. So it was very interesting to see.
There are several questions. I'll just kind of put them together. People are fascinated, of course, by the writing process, and you've spoken about that a little bit. And I was going to ask, it's interesting that you say, do you always write side by side, or do you have different sides of your home, or are you always together when you're writing?
We're always together. Yeah.
And it's kind of a very, very magical feeling when we just sit there in the silence and have this inspiration, and it's just silent in the room.
It's like an electric feeling, like of creativity. And the only thing you hear is the tapping on the keyboards to the computers.
And that's really the best feeling.
Sometimes I start to whisper, but
yeah, Alexander, when he writes dialogue, he always whispers, and that's kind of creepy, though.
And kind of as a related question, there were several people that asked the basic question, which is, where do you get your ideas? Now, are your antenna kind of always twitching for new ideas?
Well, when we started to write together, we had this box. We collected, things from newspapers and wrote notes, and we put them in a box, and we filled that box with new ideas. But after like 3 books, we understood that we never ever opened that box. So we stopped to put things in the box. The ideas, they just come.
Yeah, so far they have just emerged from.
And I think it's a way just to be true to your
intuition.
Yeah, intuition. What do you need to write right now? That's it.
From the subconscious, the collective
I'm
pool
sure.
where all the stories come from, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Let's see, Robert. I know you've got to run to teach some kids here. Do you have any other questions before we let you go?
I think we've done it. Once again, congratulations on a just fantastic thriller that I hope I assume is going to disturb a lot of people's Christmases in a very.
But it ends well.
Yeah.
It ends okay. Yeah. But thank you very much.
It was really nice to meet you.
And if you come to Stockholm, please visit us.
Yeah.
You got a deal. I look forward to when you come back to the States as well.
Yeah. Let's hope.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Well, I'm going to say the same. Congratulations on the publication of the new book, and it really is a pleasure to have you with us, albeit virtually. We look forward to having you back here in the desert at some point real soon. And happy holidays, and stay safe out there.
Stay safe.
Stay safe. Happy
Thank
holidays.
you.
All right.
See you in the
Take
States.
care.
Take care, everybody. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.